Hi, welcome back to the shop. Thanks for stopping by. This week's video, we're going to do a turning that's really geared for people who don't have a really big swing lathe. Just a nice, simple little bowl. This is only about 6 inches across in diameter and probably 2.5 or 3 inches tall. Found center, and I'm going to do this without using any 4-jaw chucks or any expensive gear, just what you would have gotten when you got your lathe. So I found my center and I put a circle on it. And I'm just going to put some hot melt glue on to mount my faceplate. So I've got my faceplate mounted to a sacrificial block. I put a bead around the inside. This sacrificial block should be just slightly concave. Okay. So just set that down on there, put another bead around the outside. If you're a wood turner and you're going to mount anything onto your lathe with hot melt glue, you want to get a really good quality glue gun that maintains its heat. So we'll let that set up and we'll put it on the lathe. Alright, so we're mounted up to the lathe here now. It's a piece of black locust, and black locust is really hard, and it finishes really nice. It turns quite hard though. It's kind of stringy, especially around the bark. Sapwood, as you can see, is quite a bit lighter than the heartwood. So first thing we're going to do is get this thing into round. So I'm just going to trim up the lip. I'm going to take a quick pass on the inside just to bring it to round as well. Then I'll turn my finish shape on the outside. Like I say, there'll be no 4-jaw chucks. This will be geared up for people that are just getting going and don't have all the fancy gear. Always check to make sure you're not touching your tool rest when you lock it down. So like most of the videos in this Project That Sells series, I'm going to do most of the turning at real time. The video did turn out to be a little long, so I did speed up some sanding and some things like that, but all the turning is done in real time. So this is turning around 1500 RPM. This is actually a twice turn bowl, so it was already hollowed out on the inside, roughed out on the inside before it was dried. You can do the same thing out of a solid piece of wood. You just won't have to true up that inside. So what you want to do when you're trying to start out with a rough blank, when you put it on your lathe, you want to get as much speed as you can out of it. It makes your cuts cleaner and it cuts easier. But you run it, you can turn your speed up until it starts to vibrate and then just back off a little bit. And so my lathe it's a very heavy lathe. It's bolted to the floor. I get no vibration on this, so I can turn it at 1500 RPM with no issue. But you may only be able to start at 800 or 500 and until you get it into balance, and then you can turn it up. Now this last little bit down here that I didn't get to cut, I'm going to just finish that in with the bowl gouge so that I have a nice smooth radius in it. Now the light shining on this makes it look like it's probably got some massive tool marks in it, but they're really very minor. You'll see when we sand it that this takes very little to take them out. Okay, so those cuts are blended nice now, and I can sand the outside. When you sand, you turn your RPM down to around 300, 350. This is a fairly smooth cut, so I'm going to start with 120 grit paper. If you have a reversible lathe and you start your sanding in reverse, it does make quite a difference in the amount of time it takes to sand. If you don't have it, doesn't matter, but it's quicker if you have the option. A very slight amount of tool marks to sand off. Now this is all heartwood except for here. This is the only sapwood that's in it, this little bit that's here and here. I'm going to leave that color in because I like it. So sapwood does, or heartwood does sand harder than sapwood because it is harder. But the important part is that there's no tear out. So you want to keep your chisels very sharp. Now I'm going to go the other direction now. There, so the lines are pretty well out of it. So I'm just going to show you that 120 grit. I'm going to sand the rest of it up off camera. I'll sand it up to 320 grit, then I'm going to use Yorkshire grit on it, and I'll bring you back when I'm doing that. Alright, so once you're sanded up to your 320, if you use abrasive paste, that's as far as you need to go. You don't even actually have to go that far. But you want to take some denatured alcohol, just wipe the dust off the outside and get a good clean surface. And that just takes a second to dry, and you can see how much dust came off it, and you don't want that on there. Okay, once your denatured alcohol is dried off, I use some sanding sealer on it next. I'm just using Mylan sanding sealer, and it's cut with 80% sanding sealer, 20% lacquer thinner. And on on raw wood like this, it's never had a finish on it. You may want to use 2 coats. You can tell by the outside of it. If it's soaking it in and it looks dry on the outside, then you might want to add a second coat. This is really dense wood. It's not going to soak it in very much. Locust also is not a good beginner wood because it is extremely hard. So if you're just starting out, get like cherry, birch, maple, things like that. Are much softer than this. Now the sanding sealer dries really quickly, surprisingly quickly. So it's not you won't lose any time. So that's dry already. So now we can put some abrasive paste on. So I use a Yorkshire grit abrasive paste. I use the regular and the microfine. You don't need microfine on just plain wood. I like to use it. It does put a really nice finish on. If you choose not to use abrasive paste, you can just continue to sand right up to whatever grit you're happy with. On a utility bowl like this, where it's not a decorative piece, I would sand it up to 600 grit. The nice thing about using abrasive paste is that you don't get any dust, and it's the very fine dust from 320 up to the 600 that you're not getting. So this regular Yorkshire grit will put the equivalent of 1,000 grit finish on it, and it does it really easily. So you just put a coat on the outside, turn it the same speed as you do when you're sanding, and then you just buff it in with the cloth, the same cloth that you use to wipe it on with. See, that's a really nice finish. It doesn't take very long. And once your grit stops working, you can tell by the feel that it's not working anymore. You can speed it up a little bit. And just take a clean part of your cloth, just rub it in. Speed it up to around 600 or so. And again, take a clean part of your cloth. And when you don't have any Yorkshire grit on your cloth, you know that you're done. It's done its job. Alright, so the next step, if you choose, you don't need to, but you can use the microfine. It just takes it up another notch to around 1500 grit. Okay, so that's the outside done. I'm going to move you around and we'll hollow out the inside. Okay, so this is the part that newer turners always struggle with. It doesn't matter how thick your walls are, make them whatever thickness looks good to you. The important part is that they're consistent thick all the way down through. And the thing to remember is that you are going to have to turn that bottom off, and you're going to want to put a slight concave on it, so leave yourself enough in the base that you don't turn all the way through. You want to have a set of these on hand, and all they are is just to measure inside out. So you can see in the lip, you look back on the other end of the tool, and you can see the gap back here. You can see what consistency wall thickness you got. So I'm a lot thicker on the bottom than I am on the top. So I'm going to thin this up all the way down through. Hopefully you can see from that cut that I took significantly more off the bottom than I did here. I hardly took anything here. Now before I take the bottom out of this, I like to put a little bit of a radius on the lip. So once you're happy with this radius and you got a nice smooth bottom on it, I'm a little deep there. We're going to want to measure. So we're 2.5 inches deep on the inside, and that leaves us about a 1/2 inch on the bottom. So we got more than we need on the bottom. So I'll bring a little bit more out of there and blend this back. Just again, remember that you're going to concave the bottom, so you don't want to take away too much. Probably 3/32 of an inch more at the base than I have on the sides, which is good. Gives me lots to concave it. So now we turn our speed down. We'll sand up the inside. It's exactly the same process as the outside. So I'll do that off camera and I'll bring you back when I'm going to take the bowl off the, actually when I put the finish on. Alright, so everything's finished up now, inside and out. Exactly the same finish on the inside as I did to the outside. Sanded at 320. Sanding sealer, then Yorkshire grit, regular and microfine. Now, the end use of this bowl is going to be determined somewhat by what finish you put on it. If you think you're going to sell this bowl or use this bowl yourself, you know, for food, then you need to put a food safe finish on. I'm making this bowl to use for wrap candy or keys and change and things like that. So I'm going to use Hampshire Sheen High Gloss. It's not food safe. This version is not food safe. So just keep that in mind when you are finishing. Then you just give it a minute to harden, and then you turn again, keep the speed up high, and then you just give it a nice light buffing with clean cloth. And you can put another coat on if you like. That's got a great finish on it now, so I'm going to be happy with that as it is. So if you're making turnings to sell, and that's the point of this series of videos, projects to sell, is to help people who are just starting out that are trying to get a little bit better gear. The most important things in selling wood turning is form and finish. And form is a matter of personal taste. What you think looks ridiculous, someone else may love, and vice versa. But finish is a universal. If you have lines, tool marks, scratches in your finish, it takes away, detracts from the piece. And so even if you've got it to this point and you found that there's scratches in it from sanding that didn't get done properly, then you should go back into it and sand it out until it's no lines again. And you'll have much more success selling your pieces that way. And the secret to sanding, as I've said in other videos, is start with the coarsest grit that you need to and get all the tool marks and all the scratches out with that grit. And then every subsequent grit finer, all you're doing is taking out the sandpaper lines from the previous grit. So I'm going to bring you around and show you how to get this off the lathe now. Okay, to remove this, you're going to turn the speed down your lathe, take a diamond point tool. All you're going to do is cut the glue. Don't touch the wood. Try not to touch the wood. And be very gentle. And remember that we put glue on the face of it to hold it to this before we put this around the other edge. That's going to hold it on there. But again, you go slow RPM and cut with one side or the other. Don't use both sides. Okay, so we've got the glue off. Don't, whatever you do, do not wedge your chisel in here because it will bite and kick the handle up in your chisel and it won't go well. So you can see this is how the tree growth rings were this way, the green now is running up and down. So you want to orient your piece of wood up and down. Not as important on all bowls, all kinds of wood as others, but some types of wood will split on you if you go cross grain. So you just take a chisel, put the flat side to the bowl, the bevel side towards the sacrificial block, and then just take a mallet. I'm gonna back you up here, way too close. There we go. Take a mallet and give it a tap on the top. Keep your finger over the edge of the bowl. It takes very little. And just pop it off. Simple as that. Now we're gonna mount this to another faceplate with hot melt glue. And again, this whole video is about doing it without having a bunch of expensive tools for people that don't have a bunch of expensive tools. Okay, so I'll show you what this is. This is just a faceplate, a metal faceplate with a piece of 3/4 plywood and a piece of kitchen countertop that you can get at any counter shop that they cut out the opening for the sink. So it's mounted, they're glued and screwed together, turned true, so it runs quite true. And that countertop surface I use to glue my bowls to. Okay, so all I've done is I've taken this is the surface of the countertop. This is a 6 1/4 diameter bowl, so I put a circle on the bowl, 6 1/4 inches, so I can center it up really well. That's important. Then I put 5 or 6 spots of hot melt glue, depending on the size of the bowl, around the outside to hold it to this. And I'll show you how to take it off after. And now we're going to turn the bottom off. And when you turn off the bottom, nice light cuts. Don't turn this any faster than 500 or 600 RPM. All right, so what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to cut this off. Very light cuts. Just get a ledge started and then push the bevel of your gouge into the bottom of the bowl. That pushes it into the faceplate and it gives it the least amount of stress on these glue joints. Now when you get down to here, especially when you get down to here and you're going to be up against the bottom of your bowl, you want to make sure you get a really good hold on your chisel so that it doesn't skate back up your bowl on you. So nice and gently, get a good hold on your chisel. Now to finish the bottom, you can take a scraper. You're going to want to make this just a little bit concave. So nice, again, very gently. a straight edge, hold it on the bottom of the bowl to make sure that it's not touching in the middle. It's only touching on the outside, so I just have to take a little bit more off the center of this. So before we get to the end of the video, just want to say thanks for sticking around and watching this video. Thanks again to everyone who subscribed and to everyone who watches my videos. I really do appreciate it. I will leave some stills up at the end, the same as usual. And if you like this video and you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so. And do feel free to leave a comment and a thumbs up or a thumbs down, depending on what you thought of the video. And all that activity certainly helps the channel. Okay, so that's nice and concave now. So you see why you leave it just a tiny bit more thickness in the bottom of your bowl so that you can make this concave. You want to make sure that you put the same finish on the bottom of your bowl as you did on the rest of it, because when people pick up a bowl at a show or in a shop, one of the first things they do is turn it over to see what you did on the bottom. And so you want your bottom of your bowl to look impressive as the rest of it. And be very careful when you sand that you don't go up your sides. You just sand to this edge. You don't want to mar that finish that you put on already. So again, back down to 350, 400 RPM to sand. This sands quite quickly because it's face grain. So I'll sand this up and I'll bring you back when I'm going to take it off the lathe. So everything's finished up now. 360 degrees of this bowl have all been done to the same exact spec. Same finish, same sanding process, same everything. So to get it off the lathe, just take that same chisel you used to part it off with before. Slide it behind the glue. You can't see it from that side. I'll show you on this side, but I'm going to do it on the other side. You just hold it into the countertop, slide it underneath the block of glue, pop it off. But be very careful not to push your chisel into the side of your bowl. Just hold your hand over the end of it. Once you've got it off the lathe, you can just take these little pieces of glue and they'll peel right off clean. If they don't come off perfectly clean, you can use rubbing alcohol, and rubbing alcohol will dissolve that hot melt glue right off. So there you go. Bowl's finished with nothing expensive, only what you got with your lathe, and bowl gouge, a scraper, and a parting or a diamond point to get the glue off. So really three tools. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.